Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In this class, we shall discuss about the missiles, and especially we shall discuss about the difference between ballistic missile and cruise missile. So we are already aware of the missiles. So missiles, they play a very important role in a nation's security. So how strong a nation is militarily is dependent on its potential capabilities like missiles. So from that point of view, it becomes important for us to understand about the various types of missile systems. So in the missile systems, there are two different kind of missiles. One is ballistic missile, another one is cruise missile. So we need to understand the difference between these two. So the first one is ballistic missile. So if we look at the ballistic missile, so this is the path followed by ballistic missile. This is the path followed by ballistic missile. So initially it is launched from here. From this point, it start moving in this direction. It will reach the highest point, and from there onwards, it will start moving downwards, descending downwards, and finally it will reach the destination. So generally missiles are meant to destroy the targets. Okay. So probably these targets, they belong to our enemies and we want to destroy it. So in order to destroy it, if you see here, we have an entity called as warhead. So this warhead will destroy the the target entity. Okay, target entity. If you look here, we have a warhead here. So ultimately our aim is to deliver this warhead to this destination point. But in order to deliver this warhead, we require certain support system. We require some kind of cover. So here, if you look here, you are only seeing a warhead here. But if you see here, warhead is also there and also protective cover is also there. Here also a warhead is there and protective cover is there. Okay, a protective cover is there. Finally, this protective cover will be removed at some point of time. Okay, from this point onwards, we see that there is no protective cover. There only exists the warhead. Okay, there only exists the warhead. So here, initially, to launch this missile, in the initial phase, we require support. This missile requires support because it requires energy, right? So that energy is provided by a rocket. Okay, that energy is provided by a rocket. So initially, if you see here, the missile, it appears so big, but gradually the missile, the rocket which gives energy to the missile, so it will be jettisoned. It will get separated from the missile. So if you look here, initially the size was very big. Now the size has become smaller. Now next, the rocket which has given energy to the missile, again it will separate from the missile. So gradually it will become smaller and smaller. So here multiple rockets are involved. So finally what will hit the target is only warhead. Okay, warhead. Here the mechanism is, initially the rocket will provide the energy. Initially the rocket will provide the energy, not for the entire duration, but only until some point. After that point, the rocket will stop working or it will shut down. Then the missile will, with the energy which it has occupied, so it will start moving on its own. So this is the mechanism of ballistic missile. This is the mechanism of ballistic missile. So the important point of ballistic missile is, so the rocket will fire only for the initial some time, for some duration. After that, it will stop firing. It will stop working, rocket. Whereas in case of cruise missile, so here I have shown the paths of both ballistic missile as well as cruise missile. So already we have discussed about the ballistic missile. This is the path taken. So here another missile, it's a cruise missile. Look at its path. Its path is like this. So it indicates that cruise missile, it can take different paths. So it will be going in this fashion. All of a sudden, if it encounters a mountain, then it will change its course. It will change its direction. Okay, again it will change its direction. So here cruise missile has the capacity to change its direction, and unlike ballistic missile, where only in the initial phase that firing of rocket is required, but here from start to end for the entire duration, that firing of engine is required. So a jet engine will continuously supply energy to the missile. That is very important. This is the fundamental difference between ballistic missile and cruise missile. Okay, this cruise missile. So now let us look into the detailed aspects of these ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Okay. So as I mentioned, ballistic missiles are powered initially by rocket, by one single rocket or series of rockets. So as I have shown here, it was not one single rocket, but it were series of rockets initially they powered the missile, but then follow an unpowered trajectory. What does it mean? From this point onwards, where the rocket stops giving the power, it will start moving on its own without any kind of power supplied by external entity. So now it has gained its own power. With the help of that power, it starts moving. That arcs upwards. Initially, it will go upwards before descending to reach its intended target. Then it will start descending towards the earth to reach its target. Okay, so this is how it works. Next, ballistic missiles can carry nuclear or conventional warheads. So nuclear warheads means it can carry nuclear weapons, and it can also carry normal weapons as well. So both the warheads it can carry. Now generally these ballistic missiles, they have been classified based on their range, that is the distance that they can travel. So again, this classification is important from the examination point of view. So the first type of missile, it's called as short range missile, or it is also called as tactical ballistic missile. So its range is less than 1000 kilometers. Okay, important. Next is medium range ballistic missile, which is also called as theater ballistic missile, and its range is between 1000 and 3000 kilometers. After that, we have intermediate range. So ballistic missiles range is between 3000 and 5500 kilometers. This is also important. And finally, the most powerful among all of these is what? Long range missiles. So their capacity is to travel more than 5500 kilometers. So that is why they are also known as intercontinental ballistic missiles or strategic ballistic missiles. So all of them, they refer to long range ballistic missiles. So these intercontinental ballistic missiles, they can fly further than the minimum range. So minimum range, I mentioned it as 5500, but they can travel much more farther distance than the minimum distance. So there are some missiles who can travel as far as 9000 kilometers. So this indicates the power of what? Long range or intercontinental ballistic missiles. Okay. Next, these ballistic missiles, they have 3 stages. So we already discussed the first phase is boost phase. So this boost phase begins when at launch and lasts until the rocket engine stops firing. So from this point to this point, until this point when the rocket is continuously supplying the energy, it is boosting the missile. So that is called as boost phase. Okay, and the missile begins unpowered flight. So once the boost phase is over, the missile will start moving on its own. From this point onwards, it will start moving on its own. So most of this phase takes place in the atmosphere. So atmosphere is approximately 1600 kilometers. Next, mid-course phase begins after the rocket stops firing. The missile continues to ascend toward the highest point in its trajectory and then begins to descend towards the earth. So now what happens? From this point to this point, it is called as middle phase. First it will ascend towards the highest point and later on it will start descending. So this is the middle phase. So this is the longest phase of the missile's flight. This is also important. In examination, they may ask you, so which is the longest flight of the ballistic missile? Initial boost phase or middle phase or terminal phase? So it is middle phase. Okay, middle phase. Next, finally, terminal phase. So terminal phase begins when the detached warhead re-enters the Earth's atmosphere and ends upon the impact or detonation. So somewhere at this point, what happens? The warhead will get separated from the cover. Then it will start moving towards a target. So this phase, it is called as terminal phase. Okay, important. So an example of a ballistic missile is Agni missile or Agni series of missiles. So in the forthcoming classes, we will be discussing in detail about the various Agni series missiles. But at a superficial level, here we shall understand that Agni missiles are ballistic missiles. Next, cruise missiles. So already I have mentioned the difference between what? Ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. So here, cruise missiles are unmanned vehicles. It means nobody is riding the cruise missiles. So without anyone's riding itself, they will travel on their own. So they are propelled by jet engines, much like an aeroplane. So from start to last, for the entire duration, these missiles, they require the support of engines. Okay, so jet engines, very important, unlike ballistic missiles. They can be launched from the ground, air or sea platforms. They can be launched from ground. They can be launched from air as well as sea. Now, unlike ballistic missiles, they can be launched from ground and they can be launched from sea, but it will not be possible for us to launch from air. Okay, so in that context, it is very much important to understand about the cruise missiles because they can be launched from air. Now, cruise missiles remain within the atmosphere for the entire duration of their flight and can fly as low as a few meters off the ground. This is very important. Now when it comes to ballistic missiles, from the earth it has to reach a highest peak and then it will start moving towards the earth. Okay. Whereas when it comes to cruise missiles, within a short distance, at the height of 1 kilometer, at the altitude of 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer from the earth's surface, what these cruise missiles can be launched. Okay, at that height they can fly. So that is very important. So as they fly very low to the surface of the earth, so they expend more fuel. So cruise missiles, they require more fuel compared to ballistic missiles, because in ballistic missiles only for the initial stage that rocket will be firing, so fuel will be required. But for this cruise missile, for the entire duration, the engine has to fire. So that's why it requires more fuel. This is also a very important point to note. Cruise missiles are self-guided and use multiple methods to accurately deliver the payload, including terrain mapping, global positioning system, inertial guidance, which uses motion sensors and gyroscopes to keep the missile on a pre-programmed flight path. Very important. Now, when cruise missile is moving, in between if there are some blocks, there are some stumbling blocks. For example, if there is a mountain, then what the cruise missile will do? It will change its direction. So internally it has some kind of sensors with the help of which it will sense the forthcoming objects, and based upon that it can change its direction. So this is the important aspect of cruise missiles. So such kind of direction changing cannot happen in case of ballistic missiles. Okay. So it is because of the inbuilt the various sensors, so it will self-guide itself. And also at the same time, apart from self-guiding, there is also provision, especially in case of advanced cruise missiles, wherein remote operators, they can use a camera in the nose of the missile to see what the missile sees. This gives them the option to manually guide the missile or to abort the strike. So here, this missile will be fitted with a what? Camera. So when it is close to the destination, a person who is operating it will come to know that the destination what we have chosen is not the right place. At that time, he can abort the complete mission. Or if the destination has moved to some other place, he can change the direction of the missile manually. Okay, by sitting here, you can, with the help of some programming, he can guide the missile. So all these facilities are possible only in case of cruise missiles. Okay, again, this is a very important point to note. Self-guiding as well as it can be also manually guided by the operator. So this is the advantage of cruise missiles. So an example of cruise missile is BrahMos missiles. So in India we have BrahMos missile system. So they are the example of cruise missiles. So in detailed we'll be discussing about the BrahMos missile in the forthcoming classes. But here in this class we saw the difference between ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Similarly, in the forthcoming classes, we will be discussing about the other important science and technology topics from the exam point of view. For all our further updates, subscribe to our channel and hit on the bell icon. Thank you.